Hello, Jerry. Can I interest you in some pie and coffee talk?
I'm always ready for some pie and coffee talk. I got a good cup of coffee going here right now.
What? Tell me about your cup of coffee.
So this one is a blend of some Ethiopian beans and some I think it was Brazil. Yeah, Brazil. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's pretty smooth.
Okay. I am drinking tea, regular, in fact, just regular tea from the UK from Taifu again, with a little bit of milk. Today I'm drinking it builder style. I've left the tea bag in here. So I set it to brew. I wait somewhere between 3 and 10 minutes. Kind of depends whether I remember that I've made the cup of tea or not. And then I add some milk and then I drink it. And I've left the tea bag in there so that it progressively gets stronger.
Cool. All right, right on. Sounds tasty. Do you
So
have pie though?
I I have plenty of pie conversation.
Right on. So recently, actually, I used the Pi. Actually, just this week, I was staging some lab equipment, some network equipment, and I wanted to test out a new mode that actually the developers have been working on called bridge mode. So bridge mode we haven't released yet to the masses, if you will, but it's a pretty slick new mode. I'm pretty excited about where you can take your WLAN Pi and you can use it in bridge mode that will allow you to connect your phone, tether your phone to the WLAN Pi. Right now, we support it over the USB connection. So you can take either an iPhone or an Android phone that supports tethering, and you
Yep.
plug it into. I plugged it into the top Type A USB port, but you could use the Type C port as well. But the cool thing is it automatically then puts the phone into that hotspot mode. Actually, you get a little prompt on your phone asking if you want to trust the device that it's connected to. You hit
On an
trust
iPhone.
on an iPhone, yeah, and then automatically switches the phone, and you don't have to do anything else on the phone. Automatically configures the phone into hotspot mode, and then
Hang
starts.
on. Two caveats. One, this does work on both Android and iPhone, but you don't get the pop-up about trust, do you, on Android? You've got to go into connections and switch on USB internet sharing, connection sharing.
Something like that. There's some tethering options you have to go through on the Android side, but it does work. I know the developers, a couple of developers have Android devices and tested it out. And
Yeah.
the cool thing with actually Android is there's a couple other options too, where you can share not only your cellular connection, but your Android's Wi-Fi connection through there. So essentially think of it, the main purpose of this bridge mode was like, okay, sometimes you're in the field and you need a way to convert some type of backhaul of cellular or Wi-Fi into Ethernet. And that's the purpose of the bridge mode on the WLAN Pi is now you have a device that you can take your cellular connection from your phone or the Wi-Fi connection in the environment and convert it out Ethernet on the Ethernet port of the WLAN Pi into that device. So what I did was I had a switch that I factory reset, but I needed to get some VLAN configuration onto the switch. And I needed to get the switch to phone home to Aruba Central for it to download its configuration. Well, that would require internet connectivity to the switch. I didn't want to connect the switch to my production lab, so I wanted to use a different cellular or different internet connection to get that switch online. And if you're in the field, I've ran into this situation multiple times where you need to get that piece of equipment provision, it got drop shipped to the site. It just has factory default configuration, and I need to get the configuration onto the switch before I can decommission the current switch and plug in the new switch. So to minimize downtime, you could utilize this in the field to get that piece of equipment online, whether it be a switch or a controller or a gateway, or even an AP, and be able to get its configuration before you actually plug it into the production network. So I think this is going to be super, super slick, a nice a tool to have in your tool belt. You can flip the WLAN Pi into bridge mode, tether it to Wi-Fi or your phone, or even we're looking at like adding Bluetooth, where you'll be able to do a Bluetooth pair between your phone and WLAN Pi to be able to share that connection over Bluetooth. So there'll be multiple ways that you can use uplinks to then translate that into Ethernet.
Okay. So the critical difference here is that this new mode, bridge mode, will enable you to bridge an internet connection to the Ethernet port.
Yes. Yep. And it's basically transparent then. So as far as, whatever you plug that into, then it'll, if that device requests DHCP, that will flow through the WLAN Pi up to whatever that device is. So in this case,
Gotcha.
like my iPhone will hand out an IP address to that device, and the device will get online. And the bridge, the WLAN Pi acts as kind of this transparent bridge in the middle there, where it doesn't see it. The other thing that is cool about it, though, is that the WLAN Pi, we also configure it where the WLAN Pi will also request an IP address. So that means that the WLAN Pi will actually be put online as well. So now not only is the piece of network equipment online, but your WLAN Pi is online. And now all of it's on, the same network as well. So theoretically, you could reach the WLAN Pi remotely through that internet connection if you were, off site and you just shipped a WLAN Pi to the site and said, here, plug in your iPhone or your Android device. And now you'd be able to reach that device remotely, your WLAN Pi and the device that you're configuring.
Okay, and this is different than any of the other modes, because there are other modes that you can plug your iPhone in or Android phone into the host port on the WLAN Pi, and you'll be able to give it an internet connection.
Correct.
But this mode will just make it really easy to bridge out to that Ethernet port.
Yeah, the difference, so in classic mode, you can plug your iPhone in and it will take your iPhone's internet connection and put the WLAN Pi online. However, the Ethernet port still acts as a standard client Ethernet port that's requesting DHCP. So in this case, it's a bridge. So the Ethernet port is that output where instead of it requesting DHCP, it allows it to pass through that DHCP traffic through its Ethernet port to the uplink.
Okay, great. Anything else to add on bridge mode? We've done something, we've done a classic move here. We've started talking about future features, and I don't feel like we've even done any kind of real deep dive on the materials, on the features that the current unit has. But so when's it coming out, Jerry? When's this new feature going to be released?
It should be. Yeah, we're just doing some more internal testing with it. But yeah, if somebody has a specific need for it or wants to do some beta testing, we do have it on our developer channel. So yeah, if they want to hit us up on Twitter or through the Wi-Fi Pros Slack or something like that, we can certainly get people early access to it. But I think it's pretty well tested now. I think there was a couple of things we wanted to polish up on, like with the front panel menu system and the information that's displayed. There's a couple of feature requests there. But otherwise, yeah, functionality wise, it seems to be working really solid.
Great. Where does a feature, maybe just the last thing on this and regarding sort of new feature development on WLAN Pi, where does an idea like this or a feature like this come from? What has the flow been of idea to it becoming a reality for people to test and then actually use on the production release of WLAN Pi OS?
Yeah, most of the time it's just kind of like somebody bubbling up an idea. We have a developer Slack, so there's a lot of ideas and stuff that just kind of get bubbled up through there, either somebody, from a conversation or just from hey, it'd be cool if we could do this. And then we have a conversation about it and say if it's possible or not, or what kind of effort it would be to do. We do also have the feedback.wlanpi.com discussion board, which is a fairly new, but I think this may have even come from that, or at least I think there were some conversations about bridge mode on there. So yeah, that would be a great place to kind of drop those kind of ideas and have a conversation about it. And, we can turn it into a feature request if there's enough interest in it.
Okay. I have a story to share. I have a story to share. I was in Dubai last week, and I was using the WLAN Pi to assist my presentation. So I wanted to share something on my iPhone to the projector, but I also wanted to seamlessly transition to sharing something from an Android phone to the projector. So I didn't need to have both phones on the screen at the same time, but it looks cool if you do that. But I wanted that ability, and it needed to be really easy. So I like to use a tool called Reflector on Mac OS. It it makes your laptop available as a AirPlay receiver, but critically, what Reflector does is it draws an appropriate outline, a border around that screen. So, the iPhone looks like an iPhone, the Android phone looks like an Android phone, which I think is, that's why it's worth paying the big bucks for Reflector. And, but of course, to do this, the phones and laptop need to be they need to be contactable using Wi-Fi, presumably, and critically, client isolation must not be enabled on that Wi-Fi network. Otherwise, those two devices will never find each other. And I was in a hotel.
The two devices, or like your laptop and the device, need to be able to talk to each other?
The laptop and the iPhone must be on the same Wi-Fi network.
Yep.
And
you have to be able to talk to each other locally.
Yeah, exactly. Because all it's using is AirPlay. So I don't know whether you can AirPlay. You might be able to AirPlay across layer 3 domains, but I don't know how.
It would be a lot of latency and stuff, so it wouldn't be ideal.
And so the hotel Wi-Fi had client isolation, but I was able to request from the hotel that they give me an Ethernet port. And then I dropped my WLAN Pi Pro into hotspot mode, plugged that in, and then I had a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi network.
So you did Ethernet into the WLAN Pi.
Yes.
Okay. So that still provided you internet connectivity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And specifically, what I was trying to do was run a speed test, Ookla speed test app. So it was essential that I had an internet connection behind my Wi-Fi.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was a fairly specific case, but I can imagine that most of the time when giving demonstrations, you would want to have an internet connection available as well. If you're using Google Slides, it's all going to be better with an internet connection.
Yeah.
So it was as simple as that. Dropped the WLAN Pi into hotspot mode, plugged the Ethernet port into the LAN provided by the hotel. Fantastic, though. Two things. Number one, it gave PoE.
I was going to ask that. That's awesome.
So it delivered PoE, which was extremely good. And the first time I tested this, I was in my room. So I plugged the WLAN Pi Pro into the Ethernet port in the hotel room. It powered up. I turned it on. It received PoE, but there was still a captive portal to go through. And just by joining the WLAN Pi SSID, I then was presented with the captive portal. Once I went through, never had to do it again.
That's awesome. Yep.
So that was and that was all low lift. I didn't have to do any CLI tweaking for any of this. The only thing that maybe I would like to do in the future would be utilize the 5 gigahertz.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. So you mentioned that it's on 2.4. Obviously the adapters that are in there support not only 2.4, also 5, also 6.
6, right?
Yeah, exactly. The caveat to it, technically, we should be able to put it in AP mode on 2.4 and 5 for now. Hopefully someday we'll be able to utilize the 6 gigahertz in an AP mode as well. Right now we can only sniff traffic on 6 gigahertz.
Okay.
But the problem is, because of regulatory domain stuff, it's proven to be a bit challenging with the Intel AX210, the Wi-Fi adapters that we have in there, to be able to reliably transmit on 5 gigahertz in different regulatory domains. In the Intel AX210 in particular, and most Intel cards, they're pretty restrictive on the regulatory domain and how that gets set and defined. We don't have a lot of control over that. So to make it work reliably, we default to 2.4.
Gotcha. Okay. And so when you say it's tricky with the regulatory domain, is this something that we, WLAN Pi, have written, or is this firmware that lives inside the Wi-Fi adapter?
Firmware for the Wi-Fi adapter? That's what you're asking about?
Well, so I was saying, why, where does that logic exist? The decision of, yes, you can use 5 gigahertz, or no, you can't.
Yeah, it's the firmware for the Wi-Fi adapter, which is written by Intel, and that gets updated fairly regularly, thankfully, because of changes with regulatory domains, especially all the stuff that's going on with 6 GHz. So we do update that fairly regularly, or anytime Intel comes out with updates. And we can push those updates over the air through the apt manager, which is pretty slick. So you don't have to like reflash the micro SD card every time that something like that gets updated. We can update those drivers and the firmware part of that.
Okay.
But yes, we with some more work on the code for the hotspot mode, for example, we could or should be able to get 5 GHz working reliably in certain regulatory domains. We just, to get this out the door and know that it would work reliably 100% of the time in 2.4 globally, that's what we default to it today. But what we could do is we could look at, more of a scripted type thing of like, if you are in this regulatory domain, then we could use 5 GHz, kind of an if then kind of thing, where it would have to look at it on a per regulatory domain basis, or maybe make it more of a user defined thing where it defaults to 2.4, but if the user knows they're either using the device in a regulatory domain where 5 GHz is able to be transmit on, then they could switch that to 5 GHz. The problem is if
go on.
The problem is that even though the radio itself supports those channels, if those channels are blocked because of the regulatory domain, blocked in the sense of we can't transmit on them, you might be able to connect on, or you should be able to connect on a 5 GHz radio from an AP, but by default, it first blocks transmission on 5 GHz to make sure there's no violation, FCC violations. So the ability to switch that, we could make that. We can kind of make that user definable, but if you're in a regulatory domain, geographically, if you're in an area where 5 GHz transmission for some reason is blocked, we may not be able to. The annoying thing is that it would try to start it up in 5 GHz, but the transmissions would be blocked. So it's not a great user experience because the device would think that it's up and running, but the driver would be blocking those frames from being transmitted.
But and this is really quite eye-opening as well in a way, because I was in Dubai. Like the last thing I want is a device that I've brought with me to start breaking the law or the regulatory defined rules in a foreign country. So and this is all based upon the country code of the beacons that the radio can hear. Is that right?
Intel uses something called LAR. I can't remember what it exactly stands for, but something about location. And that's how it sets the regulatory domain. It can't be set by the user. The user can't go in and say, I'm in the US when you're in China or something. It will actually do a scan first and see what regulatory domain you're in based on what other beacons it hears and what country codes are in those beacons. And then it sets its country code based on that.
What happens if it hears multiple?
That's one of those things where we don't know the logic behind it, but it does seem to use multiple factors. That just seems to be one of the main factors that it uses. I don't know what else it uses to kind of geolocate. But the LAR is kind of this black box of how it configures the regulatory domain of the adapter. Which, to your point, I think is, we don't want to break that, right? There's logic behind that of, to make sure that you're not violating things. Unfortunately, it seems to be a little overly conservative of, blocking transmissions by default and things like that until that LAR process is completed. So it's a little bit, we'd like to have a little more control over that, but I get it because, we don't want to violate, any laws or anything.
Yeah. No, but it was great. And I realized that, that particular use case doesn't require a WLAN Pi Pro, but in terms of a zero lift solution, it was great that I just tapped a couple of buttons on the front of my unit and suddenly I had an AP and I could join it and it had a password and I could join my Android and iPhone to that SSID using the QR code on the screen of the device. So it was all very low lift to get this solution up and running.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I think that's like the vision behind this is kind of like to have that Swiss Army knife, right? That you can just kind of throw a device in your bag that can do all these different features. You don't know if you're going to need that functionality or not necessarily, but it's better to have a tool that allows you to get that job done than not have it at all or come up with a very clunky solution. But yeah, that's awesome that they had to, even PoE and stuff, so you didn't even have to deal with,
Yeah.
plugging it in or anything. It's just, was a PoE powered access point at that point.
No, it was magical.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, Jerry, the final topic that I wanted to talk with you about on this call was availability of the WLAN Pi Pro, but also availability of WLAN Pi hardware, because I'm starting to get emails and people reaching out on Twitter, and I am fairly confident that you are too.
I've gotten a few inquiries. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'd love to say that Raspberry Pis and WLAN Pis and all that kind of stuff are readily available, and there's stockpiles of them. But obviously, as I think everybody's kind of aware, that's not the reality that we live in. Yeah, actually, there's a pretty slick website out there just to give you kind of.
You want to share your screen?
Sure. Yeah, it's rpilocator.com. And if you go to that website, share my screen here. If you go to that website, you'll see this list of all these different places that carry WLAN Pi, or Raspberry Pis, and all the different variants and stuff of them. And then you look at the in-stock column, and you'll see there's a very slim amount of them. There's 2 Pi shops in China that apparently have a Raspberry Pi 4 in stock, a 1 gig model. And then there's one place, or the same place has a 1 CM4 model that's a 2 gig, no MMC, no Wi-Fi model. So there's a couple of places where you can order them from. You can see the price and stuff here. But yeah, they're if you're in the US, you're going to wait a good couple of weeks probably to see that. But there usually is at least a place or two that does have some stuff in stock. But you can see right now, stock is not very plentiful. Most places are still out of stock. But there is the interesting thing is if you look at like the last stock, they come and go out of stock very quickly. So there is supply that's coming out. It's just very in demand. So you can see a lot of these places have had stock in the last week or two, but it's just you got to monitor that stuff pretty quickly. So the point of that being, as far as availability, is we did stock up on some of the CM4s that we need for building the WLAN Pi Pros. We actually bought these probably over a year ago now. So we do still have the CM4s in stock for at least fulfilling the batch of carrier boards that we purchased to build the WLAN Pi Pro, the one that we developed. So those are being still assembled and shipped out as quickly as we can. Right now, the focus as far as availability is fulfilling just all the back order and the wait list from WLPC. There was quite a few people that kind of put their name on the list and said they want to buy one. So we're kind of honoring that list and fulfilling all of those waitlisted entries before we put any available on the Wireless LAN Professional store. But that said, my understanding is we should be getting pretty caught up on that wait list. So I'm anticipating in the coming weeks here, we should have in-stock availability of the WLAN Pi Pro. I do believe right now, unfortunately, that's just going to be available for shipping within the US. Right. But hopefully we'll be able to open that up outside of the US then soon as well. But yeah, that will still be very limited, but there should be some in-stock availability of the WLAN Pi Pros in the coming weeks on the Wireless LAN Professional store.
Okay. So to summarize, the WLAN Pi Pro group, we did secure CM4s, the brains of the WLAN Pi, in anticipation of having units. They are going to go for sale once the pre-orders from WLPC have been honored. Then they will become generally available, but only within the USA to begin with, once we figure out logistics about how do we ship and sell internationally this unit.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the short-term plan. There's more long-term plans in the works of getting another. This was kind of the initial batch that we wanted to kind of gauge interest and see if we were, if how far off we were of, the device and the feature set, and if there was any major tweaks or anything that were going to be needed to the feature set or the design of the PCBs. So far, it seems to be fairly well received. That said, we were also in parallel pursuing more of the DIY options as well. So just this week, Jerry from the developer side of the WLAN Pi project put together a post on the userguide.wlanpi.com website with the community edition. I suppose I could share my screen for those watch the video here. Pretty slick. It's a Raspberry Pi 4 based community edition. So we're essentially kind of have the for those that want the complete solution that's plug and play ready to go. There's the WLAN Pi Pro that has the full feature set. For those that are looking for a more, let's say, budget friendly, as well as just want to be able to tinker and maybe already have a Raspberry Pi 4 in hand. You can put together this community edition version of it, which will run the same code, the same software as the WLAN Pi Pro does. And you can get a pretty similar feature set with the parts that Jerry's listed here. You can even get the display and the buttons and all that kind of stuff working. So I think I priced or totaled up the prices here without shipping and stuff. It was a little over $100 for everything you would need to get up and running. And this will give you a pretty similar feature set to the WLAN Pi Pro. Actually, even Jerry put together the supported features here, so you can kind of see what works, what doesn't work on that CE version of the WLAN Pi.
Fantastic. So people who maybe are keen to get hold of a WLAN Pi, but either don't want to buy a WLAN Pi Pro or can't because they're not in the US at the moment, an option, if you can't wait, is to build your own using the CE. And we're going to build this out as well, aren't we? We're going to come up with a few more flavors of tried and we're not going to try and be fully comprehensive. We're not going to buy every single carrier board that exists and every combination of component, because there's just too much work there. But what we might well do is come up with 3 or 4 flavors of CE that we've built, tested, and then our software will work with a little bit of lift. As far as software goes, will the WLAN Pi OS, for example, run on this unit just out of the box?
On the Raspberry Pi 4 unit?
On this one here, does the screen work without any tweaks or?
That's what we've actually been working on this week. The developers have been getting that so that it works out of the box. I believe they've got that all working now in the latest code. That's kind of pushed out there right now as like a pre-release, but we're getting ready to release a new update of the image. So yes, it would be an out of the box kind of experience of just being able to flash a micro SD card, plug in all these components, and you'd have all the functionality that you see here or listed in the feature set. There's no changes that are needed from a user standpoint. I think the only thing that Jerry had mentioned is like for the Wi-Fi adapter to work in like AP mode, you need to set a regulatory domain for that USB adapter because that's a MediaTek adapter. So it does a different process than the Intel one does. So you'd be able to set that using that command.
Okay. Presumably just one of the big standout features that's missing of this community edition unit is an AX210.
Yes, there's no Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E capabilities on here. If you look at this feature set, you can see it's missing a few things like being able to do PoE. Right now, hotspot mode is not working on it. So there's a few features that it doesn't have that like the Pro has. But if you need just some of the basic functionality, throughput testing device, profiler, all that kind of stuff does work properly on there. I was going to say also from the CE side of it, yeah, the current plan is to have 3 different models. We'll have the Pro model that's for the, complete solution, all the features, all the functionality in a nice package. Then we'll have the DIY Community Edition Raspberry Pi 4 model that we're talking about here. And then the next one that we're working on is a Compute Module 4 option, because some of the feedback that we've gotten since launching the WLAN Pi Pro is people would like to have a Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E capable device, but they don't need all the other bells and whistles like the WLAN Pi Pro has. So we're looking at making essentially kind of think of it as a lightweight version of the WLAN Pi Pro. It will be a similar size device, but it will be more of a DIY and won't have the full feature set, but it should be a fairly significant lower price point for somebody that's just looking to get into tinkering with Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E. It'll be a PoE powered device is kind of what we're looking at. So we're working on the parts list for that. Actually, a couple of us have ordered some carrier boards that we're currently waiting on to be able to test our code on it and make sure everything works out of the box and there's not going to be any compatibility issues.
Fantastic.
So stay tuned on that.
Great. Jerry, anything else or anything else to discuss?
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, but I think for this call, we can wrap it up here. I think on the next one, we'll try to get some of the developers on to talk about some of these features that we're kind of stealing their thunder on and have them talk about some of the stuff that they've been working on behind the scenes.
Fantastic. Jerry, again, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Nick. We'll talk to you later.